Okay, so welcome. Nice to have two of you here tonight. So let's
Mhm.
jump into today's text reading, which is called Self-Concept versus Self. Section 5 of chapter 31, which is the last chapter, so we're almost done with the text again. So it's quite a long one, 17 paragraphs, but we'll read in the alternative to speed things up, and let's see how we go. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. Okay, so if you can see that, both see that.
Yeah.
Self-concept versus self is the title. To translate. So I think given the length of it, let's just go straight into the alternative, which is just going to be personalized. So Kim, do you want to kick it off? Read the alternative version of the first paragraph, please.
Yeah. The learning of the world is built upon a concept myself adjusted to the world's reality. It fits it well, for this is an image that suits a world of shadows and illusions. Here, where I would perceive, here, where what I would, sorry, here, where I, like I'm actually trying to read, here, where what I perceive is one with me, I seem to be at home. The building of a concept of myself is what the learning of the world is for. This is its purpose, that I come without a self and make one up as I go along. And by the time I reach maturity, I have perfected it to meet the world on equal terms and in accordance with its demands.
Okay. So what's he saying in that one? In summary.
So the little self in this world of illusion is adjusted to that illusion. And it suits that. So you're kind of part of this world of and what the self is doing is you've got perceptions, you're in this world, and you're adapting to this world. So it's so like the little self fits into that world. Well, I think that's what it probably perceives it, that's what it has to do.
Mm.
And then I kind of it's not a you're not constant, and your self might change, and then it reaches maturity is what it defines as maturity on the world illusion terms, in accordance to what the world demands. What so you kind of it's impermanent, you're adapting to it, you're going along with what this illusion is putting out there. You perceive what's needed. You want to fit into this world.
Mm.
Um, Not that it's really accomplishing anything if you want to be, well, it's
Yeah, we
accomplishing it
adapt
what the
we
ego
adapt to the
wants in the
world, don't we?
illusion. Yeah.
So what happens with children as they come in, uh, they do have an ego, but it's not well formed. And then
Yeah.
as they grow up, have various experiences, those experiences start to shape them. They get conditioned and they start developing a self concept. Okay, who am I in the world? And as we grow and then we reach maturity, the ego said, okay, you've now perfected this self concept that you've made up to meet the demands of the world. And so we fit in to this construct of the world. And the ego says, well, this is the smart way to do things, and this is going to make you happy, except that it doesn't work. And if you do that and you adapt yourself to the world by creating this false self-concept, you're never going to find peace or happiness. You're going to be continuously seeking for those and not finding them. Seek and do not find is the ego's mantra. Because how can you find peace and happiness in a false self? Yeah, only the true self can offer you those. And the world is designed to deny the true self and perpetuate the false self and encourage the development of this false self concept, which it does very, very effectively. If you look at how most people live their lives, until the point maybe where it gets too much and they start awakening, it's very much developing a self-concept that matches the demands of the world, and they try and adapt themselves to the world's demands, and then they get more and more miserable. And then at some point, that maybe doesn't work for them. They have some kind of breakdown, which precedes an awakening, a question of, well, is there something else that is there not another way? That's really the question. And there must be a better way, as Bill and Helen Schuckman, the original scribes, said, one day in a car on the way to another disciplinary hearing, for their department in New York. They're going, there must be a better way than this. We do this all the time. Like every month we go into disciplinary hearings, and it's just a lot of conflict and a lot of unhappiness, really. And they asked for a better way. And that, the course was the response to that. A way that helps you to go beyond the concept of the self. Okay, so let's go to number 2 then. We're happy with number 1? Nice leading introductory paragraph. Elaine, if you can read number 2 kindly.
Yeah. Self-concept is made by me. It bears no likeness to my true self at all. It is a false self made to take the place of my reality as the extension of perfect love.
And so this is the Son of God, yeah? So the translation there, Son of God, and the idol is the false self. Idols are false beliefs, or in this case, false self. And the extension of perfect love is the Son of God.
Okay. The concept of the self the world teaches is not what it appears to be, for it is made to serve 2 purposes, only one of which my mind can recognize. The first presents the face of innocence, the aspect acted on. In this face that smiles and charms and even seems to love, it searches for companions, and it looks at times with pity on the suffering it perceives, and sometimes offers comfort. It believes that it is good within an evil world. So it's just talking about the self-concept that we've made for ourselves, which is nothing like the true self. So the concept of the little self that the world teaches us is not really what it is. It appears to be, but it's serving 2 purposes, and only one of which the mind can recognize. The first one, it's innocence, but it when we're talking about the small self, it has a face that smiles and charms, and it even appears to love, but it's all just smoke and mirrors, isn't it? And they even believe
Yeah,
that.
we all have this. What he's saying is there's all this victim. It's a victim identity. Oh, I'm so innocent. I'm the holy one. I'm the good one within an evil world, and I've been victimized, and oh, poor me. Isn't the world terrible? And this is an aspect of any ego. Even we are talking about Donald Trump before you
Oh
joined
yes,
us.
yes, I hear. Yes.
Even in his all the grandiosity of the character, there's this strong victim identity. Now I've been slighted and I've been wounded and poor me and how dare you and so on and so on. And we've seen that kind of behavior. So even the most grandiose and so supposedly powerful people, is going to be US president, which is one of the most powerful positions in the world. Still, the face of innocence and the smiling, charming, all of this. We call it in politician speak schmoozing. All of that is what Yeshua's highlighting and saying, okay, so is that real, or is it just part of this idolatry, part of the false self, to perpetuate a false self-concept? And really, if you look again at things like the US election, from a spiritual perspective, most of it is just designed to perpetuate the false self-concept of the people running, to big them up, and also of the people who are following and voting, because it makes them seem to be real, and they identify them with one side or the other, and that becomes part of their personal story. Oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, becomes part of the ego identity on the level of form, and that forms part of the self-concept, which is why we create these groups and identify with them so strongly. And it's why people turn up to rallies. Tens of thousands of people turn up to rallies holding posters, and it's kind of bizarre behavior, really. Why would you do that? But they do it because their self-concept is identified with it. And the same thing applies, in any marketing. Marketers know that really, if you sell someone a self-concept that they identify with, they will buy your product or service. That's the way they do it. So they figure out a way to tap into someone's self-concept. That's why you see, these ridiculous ads with someone drinking like a whiskey, and they buy a lake, or they're looking cool and suave, or they're doing something that, and then they're saying, well, buy our product, because then you'll be like this. So what are they selling? They're selling a self-concept, really. Of course, it's a load of nonsense, that you're selling sugared water that's just going to make you drunk, and have a deleterious effect on your health. So complete illusion, but it works. Billions of dollars of products are sold every day this way, because people identify with the product as part of their self-concept. And that's then what gets them to take whatever actions, and often literally buy into it. They're buying into their self-concept. When someone buys something that feeds that self-concept, they're literally buying in to its illusion, and feeding it. And a lot of the world's economy is based on that process. You buy into the self-concept, you desire something, and so you want it, and so you buy it because that feeds your self-concept. And on the other side, you buy things that are going to protect you. Why do people do things? Fear and desire. Those are the two primary motivations for doing anything, and what drives the world economy. And from going back to the Buddhist teaching, the Buddha said, well, desire is the source of all suffering. So now you've got an economy based on meeting desires, whether that's the desire for something that you want, or the desire just to be safe, the desire to avoid something. It's the same thing. It's desire. Desire is the source of all suffering, but that's actually what feeds our whole world economy and the whole system. We've just seen the US elections. It's part of the same system. Is this a system that's going to work? One has to ask. If you look objectively at it, And the Holy Spirit is trying to teach us that it's not going to work. The self-concept that we've invented and all of its systems and its structures is not going to clearly not going to work, and we have to just see that. I'm going to show you this actually. Where are we? Let's go here. I think so. So all of these egoic structures that we see in the world are really projections of the self-concept. That's what this teaching is teaching us. So you look at the US election, it's just gone. You look at how people buy and consume products and services, the whole of societal structures, and these are all a projection or reflection of a self-concept. So if we look at integral model, it explains it quite well, saying it all starts with a subjective sense of self, right? That's your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your states of mind. It influences your perceptions, your immediate sensations. This is all a subjective experience of the world. Now we make up a self that is like a placeholder for this I. We say, I am this self. And we identify ourselves as this. And then that self looks into the world, because the self perceives. And this self looks into this seemingly external objective world for reinforcement. It says, I'm going to go looking for reinforcement for this concept of myself that I've made. And of course, it tends to find it, because whatever you look for, that's what you find. This is one of the key principles of the course. Projection makes perception. So now you perceive it from the false self. You've projected it from the false self on another level. You perceive it as real, and that reinforces the self-concept. And this is why you get stuck at a level. These are kind of contour lines of consciousness. And as you go up in awareness, you start letting go of the thoughts and emotions and the self-concept that you believed in prior to it. So letting go of your self-concept automatically takes you up the scale. And when you go out of all the lines, you go beyond the construct, then you're in just pure formless awareness. And there's no concept of the self there. It's just a pure awareness without any kind of sense of self. So what Yeshua's saying to us is really we need to replace the false self with the true self. Saying, okay, so there's pure formless awareness beyond all of this. But while you're here, you're going to need to have some kind of self to operate in the world, because you're going to need to perceive, you're going to need to make decisions, and virtually impossible to do that, to function in the world without some kind of self-concept. So what he's suggesting to us is that we go into our true self, or Christ self, which is derived from God, or pure formless awareness of perfect love in alternative language. So there the diagram shows you the Holy Trinity as an operating system for your life. There's this pure awareness which is totally beyond any concepts. Okay, and at some point in this section, he says salvation can be seen as just the escape from concepts. So in pure formless awareness of perfect love, there are no concepts whatsoever. There's only pure awareness. Okay? So that is home, that's heaven, that's God, and there's nowhere else to go. If you're in that awareness, then you're home. However, this is not a teaching in this. Primarily, this is saying, yes, that that's there and it's waiting for you. But God takes the final step. When you're ready, you will enter into this awareness, and that will be it. Just merge back into this awareness. You become one with God, or merge with this awareness, however you want to phrase it, and you disappear into this awareness. And there's no separate self-concept anymore. But while you're here, there's this idea of a true self, or Christ, also called the Son of God. In alternative language, it's the extension of perfect love. In Buddhist tradition, they're called Buddha, the Atman in Hindu tradition. Whichever name you use, it's a it's a higher self-concept, right? So there's still some form of a conceptual thought, because it's not pure awareness, but it's a self that knows this awareness is its reality, that knows that this is ultimate truth, that knows that it's ultimately going to surrender itself to the light of this. So Christ surrenders to God, ultimately. That's how we want to phrase it. But in the meantime, this true self-concept is very helpful in now interpreting the world. So it's essential, what is perceiving? To have some kind of self that can perceive and correct insane perceptions, make these corrections, work the miracles, let go, surrender, awaken, atone, transform, heal, go to enlightenment, accept, whichever language you want to use. It's a process. It's a process of transformation that's now happening, directed by the true self, which is connected to its source, but in the form where it's perceiving, it's still having to interact with and acknowledge what's going on in the dream world. So the people, things, places, events, circumstances, situations, former successes, phases, and all experiences that seem to exist and happen in the physical universe of time and space are, the true self can perceive all that, but it perceives it differently. It changes its mind about the meaning of these things. The ego gives them a certain meaning, which is just designed to keep the self-concept, the small limited self-concept alive, and it wants to keep you in this red box, not knowing any better. The Holy Spirit, which is the awareness of the true self or Christ in you, suddenly says, no, none of this is true, none of this is real. You can actually let this all go, which is the correction, this is the healing, this is the awakening, and you can rest in this higher self. You can go there, and you can get a taste of heaven, a taste of this pure formless awareness of perfect love. So if we look at it in this diagram, you can go up from the timeline. Holy Spirit can take you into this awareness where you are free, you're peaceful, you're calm, and none of this exists. And even a few moments of that is a huge relief to the mind, because then you can come back into the timeline, and now your perception is transformed. That's why it's a double-sided arrow. Now you have pure formless awareness of perfect love guiding you to work and do things within the dream, but in a guided way that is facilitating your awakening from the dream. And that's really what it means to be in the world but not of the world, or to surrender to God, or to have synchronicity or flow in your life. It's to be able to go into this higher awareness, but then allow it to guide you in the dream. And so now you look at the same situation, let's say a messy divorce as an example in this one, and you look at it differently, and you have the power to perceive it differently, and not cause yourself so much pain and distress, or anyone else. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
The background, just want to show you the diagrams, because hopefully that's helpful in understanding this section. All right, so let's go on to number 3. Kim, if you can read paragraph 3, please.
This aspect can grow angry, for the world is wicked and unable to provide the love and shelter innocence deserves. And so this identity is often sad at the injustices the world gives to those who try to be generous and good. This aspect never makes a first attack, but every day 100 little things make small assaults on its innocence, provoking it to irritation, and at last to open insult and abuse.
Okay. What's he saying there?
So you might come in and with the self-concept where you want to be good and just, and then you get attacked or exposed to injustices of the world. I'm not sure when they say this aspect never makes the first attack. So you come in not making the first attack, you get exposed to attacks yourself. And as this could build up,
Hmm.
this affects what you think is good or innocent as a self-concept. And then you get provoked, whereas I think the true self probably wouldn't get provoked because it's you're unaffected. So you are affected because of what you're perceiving. So you're still in this world as the self-concept being attacked, and then you
all these little things just annoy you, and you go, well, people are just so, so attacking or inconsiderate. I had a switch up, so perfect teaching. So I was out on a run earlier, a couple of hours ago, and I'm outside someone's house, but I'm on a public footpath, right? So it's public land footpath, and I'm doing some, exercises and stuff. But obviously it's in his view, so he's now offended by this. So he comes out and he goes, "Oh, like, no, you need to be considerate. Like, why are you doing this?" Well, okay, well, that's fine. I'll move off then. But then he won't let it go. He doesn't say, "Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening." No, he has to continue complaining. No, 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 and so exactly what he's saying, what Yesh is saying here, 100 little things make small assaults upon its innocence, provoking it to irritation and at last to open insult and abuse. He wasn't being very nice. I said, okay, well, that's fine. I'm going. No problem. But he carried on. So I said, well, look, I was just on a public footpath and I'm actually allowed to be there. So, oh, no, but you're being inconsiderate, da, da, da. And I just said, okay, bye then. I ran off. But it was a perfect demonstration of this principle, and so many people are just waiting to get upset. Something's going to annoy them. And then, you couldn't just go, okay, well, the guy's doing some exercise. I'm sure he'll move off soon. Why am I even bothered about it? So what? He's doing his thing on a public footpath outside my house. Like, who cares? Does it really bother me? But the ego wants to get upset and irritated and annoyed and create a situation. Why? Because that feeds his self-concept. And no doubt he probably spent the next half an hour unpacking to his wife or partner, whatever, family. Oh, people are so inconsiderate. I can't stand these walkers who there, and they don't think about us. And now we have to deal with these people who, walking past our house and they're doing exercises, and because that strengthens the little self, doesn't it? It makes that self-concept real, which is why he behaved like he did.
So he found a problem with you being in a line of his view.
Yeah, I was on a public footpath outside his house. So it was, I don't know, 20, 30 meters probably from his perimeter fencing, which overlooks quite a nice view. And I'm busy doing some exercises, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be too long here. I probably would have stayed another 5 minutes or something. And I didn't think anyone could possibly be offended by that, but obviously I was wrong. But why would you be? I asked myself after, it's like, why was he so offended? Like, so I'm on a public footpath doing some exercises. Like, so what?
Yeah.
But he's taken it personally. He's like, oh, you're now somewhere close to the perimeter of our property and you're in our view. So now, you're somehow impacting us, and now I'll get irritated. He perceives it as a small assault upon his innocence. Oh, I'm just the innocent victim, and this is happening all the time to me, provoking it to irritation and at last to open insults and abuse. Because as I was running off, I could hear him chattering away. It wasn't very nice. I just went, okay, I'm leaving now. Having just made the point that I wasn't actually doing anything wrong. I'm on a public footpath and it's a public right of way. So if I want to linger there and do some exercises, so what? I have every right to do that. But it's just a perfect example of how this plays out. And the ego is always looking for ways to get upset. So, that was a good example of it. And then you see, okay, well, isn't that just perfect? You see how the Holy Spirit works. So this happens to me earlier. I'm like, okay, well, just let it go. And now it becomes the perfect teaching opportunity, because I can use that as an example of exactly this in the teaching of tonight. So, all things happen for good. Okay.
Yeah, I can seriously see it. And again, it's coming back to the lecture, it's some getting irritated by, the opposition on various things, and it turns into a whole slating match. And I could feel even myself getting a bit caught up in it over a period of time. Like, I could see myself aware afterwards going, okay, this is ego stuff. I'm getting triggered myself, but it's like, but it's like it says 100 little things, and then, maybe, there's things that kind of might bother me, not so much insults, more. I think but again, I can hear myself going, okay, well, I'm a little bit more justified. It's not just about this. It's not about personal insults, but it's about maybe there's certain freedoms. And I feel myself getting triggered sometimes. It's like, yeah, okay, here you go.
But you see how the ego works. It wants you to participate in that. It tries to suck you down into that level of pettiness, of ridiculous, pettiness, and oh, now I'm the innocent victim and I'm wounded, and oh, poor me, and oh, by your hand, my brother, now I've been hurt, and so you to blame, because then it's the projection of guilt outwards, and it's just all nonsense. I think the guy was upset primarily because I just ignored him and I ran off. I'm like, I'm not going to stay around and engage in this. It's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? I said, look, actually, I didn't do anything wrong because I was on the public footpath. And then I just ran off. Because it was like, that's true. I could have actually, I had every right to stay there as long as I wanted. I'm on a public footpath. The fact that you don't like it is really your problem. But obviously, you see the way the ego works is they'll say, oh, no, the problem is not me. The problem is the man doing his exercise in front of my house who's being horribly inconsiderate. And now, and this is probably ongoing. You can imagine. He probably doesn't like the fact that his house is right next to a stile. So people come over it and they walk past his house all the time. It's a public right of way. So he probably doesn't like that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh no, to add, okay, well, he can't really do anything if someone's just walking past. But if I stay there and I'm doing some exercise, then oh no. Now his ego says, no, and absolutely, you have to do something about this. This is not acceptable. And so he has to come out and go, clear off, you're being inconsiderate. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, you're pushing an open door. I was going to go anyway soon, so bye. But he wanted some kind of argument.
Was he old?
He wanted to fight because that's
what the
ego wants to do.
Man? Was he an old man?
Yeah, sort of elderly. I don't know, maybe in his 60s, maybe 60s, 70s. I don't know, but
sort of retired. Yeah,
gray. Yeah, probably retired, and just obviously not really anything else to do than go and police the area outside his property, which is public domain. You can walk on that. It's a public footpath, as you know, in England. They've got all these public footpaths. So I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just lingering on the public footpath, which, according to him, I wasn't supposed to do. But there's nothing saying that you can't. I could have hung out there for half an hour. I still would have had the ability to do that. And the fact that it irritated him was just his ego using the situation.
It depends on the clothes you're wearing.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in running gear. Nothing, nothing outrageous or offensive or anything. Just jumping up and down, doing my thing. And then he's like, no, I can't stand that. That's I have to get offended now. Instead of just letting it go. If he'd been a course student, he would have gone, well, so what? Just let it go. If he wants to go and jump up and down on some grass, and in front of my property, so what? I just won't look out the window. So what? You know what I mean? So what?
Well,
I'll
we
just
get it
turn
all.
away and
Yeah, we
I'll
get it
watch
all.
TV or something. It doesn't really matter. But the ego wants to be offended. It's looking for the offense, isn't it? That's what you've got to see.
Well, I
Always
have
looking
actually,
to be offended.
I have seen my husband Dave do that a little bit. If somebody sort of
Mm.
gets in the way or the car gets parked in front of his view, he starts to get angry.
Mm.
And I'll say,
Yeah.
what? And he'll say, look, they've deliberately parked in front of us.
Mm.
But I said, Dave, they can. They're allowed to.
Yeah.
It's a public
Yeah.
parking place. So it must
Yeah.
be
You
part of
can't,
getting old.
but you see how ridiculous the ego is? It's trying to control the minutiae of life.
Yeah.
And then it's getting upset, and it's saying to these individuals that this is some kind of formula for happiness. And of course, it's never going to make you happy. You're
No.
always going to be irritable. You're always going to be feeling like, oh, someone or something has upset you, because that's the way you set up your life. And in fact, you look for it. What Yesh is saying to us is, if that's what you want to see, that's what you will want to perceive in the world, and you will go looking for it.
And it'll be there. Yeah. It's true.
And it'll be there for you because that's what you want. So you'll find what you seek, and it will give you the experience that the ego says you want, and then you're going to be upset and irritable, and your self-concept is going to be strengthened. And all of that is just total illusion. None of it means anything. It's a complete charade. There's no reality, there's no meaning, there's no purpose, to any of it. So as, spiritual, awakening spiritual beings, we have to just see that. This is just all storm in a teacup. It's all nonsense. Ridiculous. It's insane. Just drop it.
Yeah.
Just leave it. Don't engage in that level of argument. It's just pointless, futile. And when things like this happen on TV, as you've just experienced, Kim, don't get sucked into it. Turn it off. It was a great. Did you ever listen to that? You might know this, Kim. It's a guy, is an Afrikaans musician called Johannes Kerkorrel. Do you remember him?
No.
Yeah, Johannes Kerkorrel in the 80s, when P.W. Botha was doing his thing, and it was really one of the most ugliest men in the world. He's like these big lips and the wagging finger, and he wrote the song saying "Sit it af." In other words, turn it off. Turn off the TV. When you see this going on, just sit it off. Turn it off. Which was a hit, because it's like, well, it's just nonsense. What you're watching is ridiculous nonsense. So just turn it off and don't engage in it. Which is why I watch very little TV, a bit of sport with Gabriel, and that's about it, because it's just all nonsense. It's a charade. It's what you're seeing is an illusion on a screen, and the media are trying to hook you in mentally and emotionally to that illusion, because that's the way that they get viewers, and they sell their TV and their advertising. They have to hook your attention, and they know very well how to do it with these egoic hooks. And you just, as a awakening spiritual person, you have to go, no, I'm not falling for that. That's why I literally thought, okay, well, let's see. There was something on YouTube, and I put it on for about a minute, and I was like, no, it's just a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
Stop. I don't want to get sucked into all of this, because they're talking about, then this is where it's at, and the primary election in Delaware is this, and I'm like, do I really want to sit watching this? Just like pointless, ridiculous. It has no purpose and meaning and value in my life. So just don't bother. But amazingly, millions and millions of people get sucked into it, don't they? Big time. Like they're all sitting glued to the screen, watching, thinking that this is something important and meaningful and real and significant, when actually it's just an illusion that's being shown to them. All right, so let's carry on. So we're number 4. So I think it's Elaine, if you can read that.
The identity of innocence, the concept of the self, wears so proudly can tolerate attack. Oh, keeps bouncing back. Attack in self-defense, for it is not well known fact that the world deals harshly with defenseless innocence. Everyone who makes a picture of themselves incorporates this identity, for they need it. But I do not want to see the other side of this picture, yet it is here the learning of the world has set its sights, for it is here the world's reality was made to ensure that my false self-concept remains intact.
Okay. What's he saying there in summary?
Well, it's this identity of innocence that wears so proudly and can tolerate all this attack in self-defense. So when we make a picture of ourselves, it incorporates the identity, but we're not really wanting to see the other side of the coin or the picture. But this is where we learn. But we are so wrapped up in this false self-concept, we want to keep it firmly intact. So,
so everyone has this innocent victim, don't they? If you're identified with your separate self, there's not a separate self in the world that hasn't at some point been wounded. Has been the innocent victim. Someone has hurt them. Someone's done something to them. Because, you know, this has happened to me. And it's here the world's reality was made to ensure that my false self-concept remains intact. And so what better way to convince you that you are a separate self, but through the victim identity? We look at this diagram. Let's go back to the Descent into Hell diagram. At the very bottom of the ladder of all of the ego's machinations, it brings us to its triumph, which is the victim identity. It says, you are a victim of the world. You're living this helpless, innovative little life, which is hell. There's all this limitation and lack and loneliness and suffering, and inevitably you're going to die. And this is real. And the ego says, this is now your identity. Don't forget it. And now you're going to perceive that the world is just reinforcing this identity. All of the accusation and blame and attacks that the world engenders just reinforce this helpless, innovator little life, victim identity, which keeps you very, very far away from who you really are, which is pure formless awareness of perfect love. So you cannot be in this very limited state of mind and also know God, know that you're pure formless awareness of perfect love. They are mutually exclusive states. So this is why everyone invents this so-called innocent self that is now the innocent victim of this cruel world outside of them, because it very, very effectively reinforces the separate self-concept that they've made up. Okay. So number 5, Kim.
Back, I just had to have something to charge. Beneath the face of innocence, there is a lesson that this concept of the self was made to teach. It is a lesson in a terrible displacement and a fear so devastating that the face that smiles above it must forever look away in case it perceives the treachery it hides. The lesson teaches this: I am what my self-concept made of me, and as it perceives me, I stand condemned because of what I am. The world smiles with approval on the self-concept, for it guarantees the pathways of the world are maintained, and those who walk on them will never escape.
Okay, so summary of that. What's he saying there?
Well, the self-concept is it's saying that because of what it is, it gets attacked, and that we get that reinforces what it is. So it's like I think the same as what you said about the victimhood. You sort of you get attacked. You think that you're a victim. You believe you're a victim. You get attacked, and then you'll say, "See, I'm a victim because I'm being attacked." So it reinforces it. And then the world like goes, okay, and then this world's like, it affirms it, and you stay on that path, and it's like inevitable that you persist this self-concept in this world of yourself, and you perceive the world as attacking you. It's just like this vicious
I stand
cycle.
condemned because of what I am. So remember, the ego is guilty by definition. We go back here, but understand that just to exist as a separate individual self, this is the self-concept the ego's made up. You feel guilty because you have destroyed God, love, oneness, pure formless awareness, whatever you want to call it, in order to exist as an individual. This is why the ego will never work, because at its core, it feels guilty just to exist. So that's why you will never fix the ego. You can never transform it. You can never go, I'll make myself into a better ego, and that's going to work. And we've tried many, many, many ways of doing that, and they've all failed. Because at its core, it shouldn't exist. It's a delusion. It's false. And the guilt that underpins it means that you're always going to have all this dysfunction. You cannot be an ego without the guilt and the sin, and those require punishment. So then you have fear going on, a false expectation of punishment appearing real, and you have to invent a false, fearful, wrathful, and separate God from you to enact that punishment. And then you've got to go and project all that out because you can't handle all that, and put yourself into a body in a world of all these forms, where now you can apparently be attacked. Now there's all this accusation and blame and attack going on as a projection of guilt. And now you seem to be a separate individual in a body who can actually be attacked. And now your victim identity seems to be true, right? It's an inevitable consequence of the idea that you're an individual self, all of this. That's what he's asking us to see, right? It is a system of thought that inevitably leads you into the victim identity, which is hell. And the only way out of it is to deny all of it. You can't keep a little bit of your individuality and not be in hell. You can't maintain a little bit of self-concept, I'm a separate self, and not experience hell. It's not possible. You will. So you have to drop that self-concept entirely or not at all. And that's what the Course is teaching us. The reinterpretation of the ego's dream by the Holy Spirit, or the awareness of oneness, just goes, well, this is just a made-up illusion, and its only purpose is to perpetuate this false self-concept. That's all it's for. Okay, well, if I understand that, I can look at all of it from a still, calm awareness and not be sucked into it, because none of it's true and none of it's real, and I don't need to go there. My salvation and my awakening lies in just maintaining this pure awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, in the stillness, in the peace, in the calmness. That's where I'll find what I'm really looking for. I'll never find it in all these illusions and by listening to all these egoic thoughts and emotions. It's never ever going to work. And I mean, that's a pretty simple realization, but it takes us a lot of practice to really get that, doesn't it?
Mm.
Because we're so attached to this whole drama show, and we're so attached to the self-concept that we think is real. I remember when I was going through, it was a hectic time about 10 years ago. I just come to the UK and got married, had a baby, and I was like, what's just happened to my life? It's all just gone completely tits up, and like I'm really struggling. And I remember thinking, and I was like, okay, I'm trying to practice the course. I'm really just trying to apply these lessons. And I remember there was this time where I could really start to see the self-concept, the false self-concept. And I remember saying to myself, Jesus, Jono, this stuff's going to kill you, in my head. But it was that voice saying, because the self-concept was going, okay, the Jono character is now going to be destroyed because of, this teaching of the Course in Miracles. And almost immediately after that, the Holy Spirit said, yeah, with this kind of wry smile, that's kind of the whole point. The teachings, that the separate self isn't real, the ego is just false. You know all this conceptually. So what did you think? You were gonna become enlightened and not have to let go of your separate self concept? Something like that. I can't remember exactly, the words that you used him. But it showed me very clearly that self-concept that thought it was going to die was just an illusion. It was never real to start with. So all of its fears and attempts at self-preservation are actually meaningless. They don't mean anything because it doesn't even exist. And when you can accept that and just allow the Holy Spirit to reinterpret the whole situation for you, then you're awakening. And if you don't accept it and you want to stay rooted in the victim identity of the ego, then you suffer. It's as simple as that. Okay. So let's go back to that. Happy with number 5. And number 6, Elaine, if you can kindly read that for us, please.
Here is the central lesson that ensures my companions are condemned eternally. For what I am has now become their sin, and I cannot let go of this. No longer does it matter what they do, for my accusing finger points to them, unwavering and deadly in its aim. It points to me as well, but this is kept still deeper in the midst of my subconscious below the face of innocence. And all their sins and mine are preserved in my subconscious mind and kept in limited awareness, where they cannot be perceived as errors, which pure formless awareness would surely show. I can neither be blamed for what I am, nor can I change the things it makes me do. My companion then is a symbol of my sins to me, who are silently and yet with ceaseless urgency, still condemning my companion for the hatred thing I am. Well,
okay.
It's sort of caught up in this dilemma of it knows that below the subconscious there's this innocence, but it's caught up in this hatred of our companions, and it's condemning. But it's hard to let this all go, this limited awareness, this limited self, because obviously pure formless awareness would know exactly what to show us to do. Sorry, I'm trying to put it into a. It's
okay. You're doing all right.
It's just a real dilemma, isn't it, for the poor old. Well, it's not a poor old; it's a non-existent ego, but it's fighting for its life.
Yeah, it's fighting
different
for a
quality.
miserable existence as a victim. Like, well, why would you want to defend such a miserable self-concept that causes so much pain and suffering and misery and ultimately going to kill you? Why would you possibly want to defend that? Surely, you would welcome anything that helps you to free yourself from that and the hell that it's created in your life. And the ego is telling you this is you have to defend this with your life. This is your life. This is your existence, and you must do whatever you can to preserve the self concept that you made, even if it kills you, which it will. And yes, you're saying to us, but look at that. Does that make any sense whatsoever? Is that really what you want to do? Live in a state of hell, helpless, innovative little life as a victim and suffer all this limitation and lack and loneliness and suffering and sickness and death, on and on it goes. And then you're the innocent victim and everyone's hurt you and oh, poor me. And then you tell your story to everyone. Is that really what you want to do when you're the son of God, when you just have pure formless awareness of perfect love in your mind and you could just be that? It makes a nonsense of the self-concept. When you compare it to what's possible, you could just be pure, holy, sinless, innocent, perfect love, perfect peace, perfect joy for all eternity. Yeah, that's your true reality. That's what you could be. And you choose this instead? Are you insane? Says Yeshua. Why would you do that? It makes no sense whatsoever when you view it from the right-minded perspective of the Holy Spirit, does it? But why would you do that to yourself? And fortunately, there is no valid reason for doing that to yourself, which means you can let it go and choose again. Say, okay, I don't need to be a victim of an unfair world anymore. It doesn't give me anything. It doesn't serve me. It just causes me endless pain, suffering, misery, and death, and I don't want that anymore. That's now the reinterpretation of the Holy Spirit coming into the dream and saying, look at all of this and just see that it's all just false. It's like a bubble. And I've got a situation in my life at the moment. I'm just when I find myself getting into thoughts about it, I'm like, I just try and zoom out and I pop the bubble. And I go, okay, just collapse it. Because whatever's going on in the bubble is nonsense. Oh, and this character's doing this, and what might happen in the future. If I do this, they might do this, and on it goes. And you've got to kind of zoom out of the bubble and just go, no, because I'm in true awareness, which is not affected by whatever's going on in the bubble of thought that I call my self-concept. Do you see that? So that's quite a helpful way of looking at this. Going, you're in a little bubble or a box that you think is real, and within this, your whole reality plays out. But actually, it's a very, very limited reality, and you're keeping yourself apart from pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is really everywhere. Right? So obviously, in a diagram, it would be difficult to show it everywhere, but pure formless awareness of perfect love is essentially the white space. Right? It's everywhere. So you think you're in, look at this. You're in the box, right? And you think you're the victim, but actually the white space is still there in the box, isn't it? And actually there's more white space than there are letters. It's what underlies the ego's dream. But you're just not aware of it because you're too focused on the form of what's going on here, symbolized by the letters in the diagram. And you're not aware of the white space, which is always there. And in fact, without the white space, you couldn't have any letters, and you couldn't have any boxes, and you couldn't have any of this, could you? Without the white space that it's now been imprinted on, it's covering the white space over. So that's really, obviously I couldn't demonstrate that in a diagrammatic form, so I've called it a blue kind of, blue circle, and put it there. But actually, God is the white space behind all this. And so even in the midst of the ego's madness, the white space is always there, isn't it? It's the background to all of the drama, which you can access at any point because it's all there. It's always there. It's never gone away. And so the Course is saying, well, go into the white space and forget the form of the letters and all the drama going on. That's not really what's important at all. It's the white space that underlies it. And there's much more of that than there are, letters and forms. The white space is always there, and there's a lot of it. And it underlies each letter. Each letter is actually on the white space, even if it's a letter of, it's got a color, black or blue or whatever. Underneath it, the white space is still there. It's imprinted. It covers over that white space. In the same way, all form is a projection onto the white space of pure formless awareness, of perfect love, which is just an empty blank canvas. And then all this stuff gets imprinted over it. And that's the veil of illusion that now comes to cover over the white space. And now it shows you something else. And then your mind gets caught up in the something else, and you forget that there's just really the white space. And that was always real. All of this stuff can go, but the white space will never go. The white space is permanent and eternal. Okay. Any comments or questions on that diagram?
That's good.
And what we do here, just to go back to the diagram, is we use our companions to perpetuate our false self-concept. So if we see others as hurting and victimizing us, then that perpetuates our victim identity. You see that?
Yeah.
And so that's why we actually want our companions to behave in hurtful, horrible, attacking ways, because it feeds our ego. And then we are both condemned. They seem to be condemned because I blame them for all of their attacks, but really I'm condemning myself to be a perpetual victim and suffer and die, which is the point he's making here. So it may seem that it's being done to you and the innocent victim of all this, but actually you're just condemning yourself by judging them as being able to hurt you. You then are believing in a false self-image of this victim identity. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go on then to number 7. Kim, I think it's your turn.
Yes. Concepts are learned. They are not natural. They do not exist apart from learning. They are not given, so they must be made up. Not one of them is true, and many come from feverish imaginings, hot with hatred and distortions born of fear. What is a concept but a thought to which its makers give meaning of their own? Concepts maintain the world, but they cannot be used to demonstrate the world is real. All of them are made within the world, born in its shadow, growing in its ways, and finally maturing in its thought. There are false ideas of false forms, painted with the brushes of the world, which cannot make a single picture representing truth.
Okay. Summary of that. What's he saying there in summary?
Yeah, so it's like what you're saying earlier, John. I mean, we come into this world. I mean, we're born as this a separate self, but the concept is not yet developed. So, so it didn't exist. But then, as one is in the world and has experiences, then you start forming self concepts or an identity, which isn't a victim identity, but in it's more specific identity based on how you think and react to things and how you experience things.
Yeah, and
So,
there's a strong victim. I mean, I've seen my son growing up, and you see kids develop a sense of an innocent victim. There's that aspect to their personalities. Oh, I'm poor me. And of course, they're just kids, but you see the self-concept being developed as you go. From really pure awareness. Remember, there's a photo of Gabriel at like 4 months old, and I thought it's just so innocent. There's no self yet that's formed, really. You could kind of see this light of innocence shining through, and then, as they go, they develop the self-concept, which they have to adapt to the world. They're apparently a person. The world tells them that, and they're going to go to school, and they're going to have friends, and they're going to have various experiences, and this all seems to be real and normal, and their self-concept starts forming based on those experiences, and that's how the ego's designed the whole system. But all of this is designed to maintain the world as an illusory construct in our mind and maintain this false self-concept. And then we finally mature in its thought. We grow up and we, adults, and then supposedly we're really mature and wise. But most adults, if they're in the ego, are not at all. They keep doing foolish things, and because the ego's in charge. And they haven't really learned who they are. Only when they start to awaken does that happen. And then they realize, well, I was really clueless. I didn't actually know anything about anything. Because how can a false self really know anything? The false self now has all these ideas, false ideas of false forms painted with the brushes of the world, which cannot make a single picture representing truth. Okay, so I really have no idea. I'm completely clueless. Everything is false, and that's really when you start awakening. You awaken to the knowledge of truth that lies beyond it all. Okay, so any other thoughts on that one? Questions, comments? Let's go to number 8 then. You can leave that one alone.
The concept of the self is meaningless, for no one here can understand what it is for, and therefore cannot conceive what it is. Yet all learning that the world directs begins and ends with the single aim of teaching me this concept of myself, so that I will choose to follow the world's laws and never seek to go beyond its paths, nor realize the way I perceive myself. Now the remembrance of perfect love must find a way to help me understand this self-concept, must be undone if I am to have any peace of mind, nor can it be unlearned except by lessons aimed to teach that I am something else, or otherwise I would be asked to exchange what I now believe for total loss of self, and then terror would arise in me. It's just saying a concept in yourself is meaningless, because no one here can understand what it is. And the learning of the world begins and ends with the single aim of teaching the concept of ourselves, so that we will choose the world's laws and never go beyond that. But we've got remembrance of perfect love to find a way to help us understand this self-concept and get it undone, so that we can get some peace of mind. So,
Yeah.
but we can't, what's it saying? We can't unlearn it except by lessons. So we can't
teach them something else.
Sorry, I don't know what that, no.
Yeah. So what he's saying here really is that we need this intermediate level, I call it a mezzanine level, of the Christ or the true self. Otherwise, we would go into total pure formless awareness. And that when we're very rooted in our ego, that's incredibly fearful. I would describe that situation where I was like, oh my God, this stuff's going to kill you. It was very fearful. I was feeling the demise of my separate self, and it wasn't liking it at all. And got so uncomfortable. It's like, I just don't know what to do with myself anymore. It's just like, but I can't really go anywhere. It's just kind of got to just go through the discomfort. So what he's saying is, okay, the Holy Spirit's going to come in and it's going to give you a temporary replacement for your false self, the self-concept that you made up. And that is your true self or Christ. So the true self or Christ is still a concept. So it's not pure formless awareness of perfect love yet, right? But it's between the levels. If this is level 2, Ken Wapnick talks about level 2, of the level 2 of the illusion, the false self-concept, and the world that is projected out. Level 2. Level 1 is just God, pure formless awareness of perfect love. So the question becomes now, how do you get between the levels? And yes, you're saying, well, to go straight from here, rooted in this, to here, pure formless awareness of perfect love, is probably going to terrify you too much. It's too much, right? And there are people who say, no, the course is too full on and non-duality is just too much. It's too radical for my liking, because they're not willing to let go of their separate self. It's all a bit scary to be told that your separate self doesn't exist and the world doesn't exist, and just go back into pure formless awareness of perfect love. So what Yeshua's given us then is a compromise solution, saying, okay, I understand, that's not really going to work for most people. It's too fearful. And there's got to be some kind of process of the mind awakening to be prepared for this. This seldom just happens. Occasionally revelation can just happen to someone who's very much invested in their ego, but it's relatively rare. So he's saying there's a process you're going to go through, and I'm going to show you by through all this mind training how you can identify more and more with this true self or Christ that you really are, and this can still perceive the world, but it perceives it in a right-minded way. It perceives it from the perspective of perfect oneness that knows that none of this is real, and so it doesn't get upset and it doesn't judge. Doesn't attack, it doesn't judge, there's no sin, there's no guilt, there's no fear. It merely sits and waits and judges not. It just sees, when I say judges not, it's not condemning anything. It just says, I understand all of this is illusion. So its only judgment of the world is that none of this is true and none of this is real and only the peace is real. So it's very much connected. It's rooted in this awareness, but it's able to perceive and it's able to make decisions. So he's saying, well, let's go to that self first. Let's try and work on that and get you to start understanding this and living this in your daily life. So you are now the true self or the Christ operating in the world, and you're awakening yourself and you're awakening others, and that's about the best you can do while you're in the world. And then he really says the last part of it, which is this final surrender into this level 1 awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, going back to God, will happen when you're ready. So he gives us very little teaching on that. He just says, God will take the final step when you're ready. So your job is to get yourself into a state of readiness, which equates to identifying more and more with the true self and its peace that comes from pure formless awareness of perfect love, and letting go of all of the ego shenanigans, and the fear and sin and guilt, etc., that are associated with this seeming reality that you've made up. And you start to let go of more of that more and more. And as you do that, you raise yourself up into this awareness. So forgiveness or letting go is how you learn that you're the true self. Once you know you're the true self, then pure formless awareness of perfect love comes and it merges into your experience and it reveals itself to you. That's what he means by God takes the final step. So it's an elegant solution, and it's a 3-step process to getting back into pure formless awareness of perfect love. Essential, necessary, which is why he gives it to us. And I think many students of the course, teachers of the course miss this. They don't fully understand the operating system that Yeshua is teaching us here to awaken. And some people say, well, all of this is illusion, none of it matters. You're just pure formless awareness of perfect love, right? That's the level 1 statement. Yes, but that's not going to help you much if you think that you're a self-concept stuck in a body in a hellish world and you're suffering and dying. You need a process to awaken to that knowledge, which is exactly why he's given A Course in Miracles. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't have given it. So, well, you're already there, so there's no teaching needed. All I need to do is say nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. You'll get it immediately, and voila, you'll be back in level 1 awareness. The world will be forgotten, and you'll be home. But he knows it's not going to be that easy. He knows how deeply entrenched the ego is, and so this process of mind training is essential to help you to awaken, to help you to continue on the journey. So to deny the process then is also to deny this, because the process is what's going to get you there. And you could say, well, I already am there. Yeah, in truth, but the problem is you don't believe you're there. So until you have fully accepted this and you fully believe you're there, in which case you will be there, you're not quite there, and your job becomes to let go of those blocks, remaining blocks, to the awareness of love's presence, so that ultimately you're ready for this total surrender to pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is exactly where the Course and all spiritual practices and teachings come in. They teach you how to go into the true self and the Christ and let go of whatever needs to be let go of. Okay. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Clear on the Holy Trinity, and you see how he's teaching us that in these last 2 lines. He's saying you need that Christ self, or that true self. You need to identify with that rather than pure formless awareness, because that's going to be too scary for yourself, or for you right now. Okay, so that's all the Holy Spirit's lesson plans arranged in easy steps. But though there be some lack of ease at times and some distress, there's no shattering of what was learned, but just a retranslation of what seems to be the evidence on its behalf. I just read the first sentence because it's got Holy Spirit in, which is translated to remembrance of perfect love. So, Kim, I think it is. Will you read number 9 for us, please?
Remembrance of perfect love's lesson plans are arranged in easy steps in this way, so that although there be some lack of flow and distress at times, there is no shattering of what I have learned, but only a reinterpretation of what seems to be the evidence on its behalf. I will consider then what proof there is that I am what my companions made of me. For even though I do not yet perceive that this is what I think, I must surely have learned by now that I behave as if it were. Do my companions react for me? And do my companions know exactly what would happen? Can my companions know my future and ordain before it comes what I should do in every circumstance? My companions must have made the world as well as me to have such a foresight about the future.
And what's he saying here?
Well, it's about remembrance of perfect love, or the Holy Spirit. It's to say that the role of it is to help the reinterpretation based on my true self. So it can be a bit distressful. I think it's what you were saying earlier, Jono. It's too much for the ego to go from the self-concept to be destroyed and to actually with us to go back into the
jump straight from
yeah
here to here,
yeah
like polar
yeah
opposite. It's
yeah
not possible. Even if people have an experience, sometimes people do that. They have an experience of this sort of revelation, and they go, "Oh, that's amazing," and whatever. But to stay there, they're not ready to stay there, so they come back down into the ego, and often, get stuck there. John knows a guy who's been depressed for 20 years. He had 3 weeks of bliss, apparently, where he really was on cloud nine, and he got it, and then it just vanished, and he couldn't get it back, and he's been depressed ever since. So you got to do the work, and he probably hasn't. Yeah, probably like, okay, well, this is just the ego reasserting itself. I've now got to work through this stuff. I had a glimpse, I had a taste of heaven, it was wonderful. Now I've got to, get my gloves off and really do the hard work of letting go of the self-concept and all of its attachments, and that's what this course is about, saying we'll do this process because that's going to get you to a level of identifying with your true self, and there's going to be a sense of peace and love and joy that permeates that self. So you're not necessarily always in pure formless awareness of perfect love, but that's present with you. There's an awareness of that. It's always with you. And now you can interact in the world and make decisions and have perceptions and do all of that, but you're doing it from a different self. And so this is the system Yeshua's given us, and he's saying, this is the best way of awakening. If you say there's no self, that is again doctrine of Buddhism. There's no self. This is ultimately true, right? There's no self in pure formless awareness of perfect love. Or nirvana, they call it in Buddhist teaching. Nirvana is referring directly to this state of awareness. There is no self in that. But to go straight from your false self-concept into nirvana is virtually impossible. So what's needed is this kind of intermediate level, mezzanine level, where you can start identifying with the true self, the Christ, that knows God, but also is able to reinterpret the world and have true perceptions and give you guidance and so on. Okay. As I said, this isn't that well known. I haven't really seen many course students and teachers talking much about the Holy Trinity, and that it's an operating system for your life, and the route map. It's saying this is how you awaken through using the Holy Trinity in a very conscious, deliberate way, allowing the Holy Spirit to come in and guide you.
But all those questions, Jono, is that like numbers 4, 5, and 6? Is that me trying to, work out, in this kind of phase of just adjusting to making this reinterpretation, and with that, you're asking those questions?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's saying this will facilitate your learning at this point. Ask these questions. Do my companions react for me? Well, evidently not. It's my own reactions. Do my companions know exactly what would happen? No. How can they? Can my companions know my future and ordain before it comes what I should do in every circumstance? No, clearly they can't. But if they could, my companions must have made the world as well as me to have such foresight about the future. So they can't really, but if we think we can, then we give them this illusory power.
Yeah, so like the external world creates me, but it's like the perception needs to change that the perception creates the world rather than
Yeah. Yeah,
the other way around.
exactly. The ego is telling us the world is outside of us,
Mm.
and we're on the we're the innocent victim of a world that's really there, that's really outside of us, that acts independently from us. People, places, circumstances, and events that are seemingly in this objective reality are separate from me, and they can hurt me. So then I perceive I'm the victim. And I look on these events in fear. You know, I can't really be safe because these can always hurt me. But this awareness says, no, actually, whatever you're seeing out there is really in your own mind. So how can you really be hurt? What you're doing is you're projecting. Let's say you've got a very narrow self-concept. Take that, you know, that chap that I mentioned who came and had a go at me. Yeah, probably pretty fairly limited. Identified with a separate self because he's, you know, then feeling wounded and angry when someone, you know, dares to do something in front of his house. This self-concept is then going to create those situations. Yeah, so why did I stop there? Well, maybe I stopped there precisely because that's what his ego wanted, so that he could get upset, which is then duly what happened. But from a forgiveness point of view, that's the perfect lesson. See that? It's the
Yeah.
perfect lesson for him. He could have really looked at it and gone, well, why am I irritated? Why am I making such a big deal out of this guy's not affecting me at all. He's just outside my house. I don't even have to look out the window. Just, you know, carry on in my own house and just let him do his thing. So let it go. And you know, then that's a letting go, opportunity to let go of his false self-concept rather than perpetuate it. But he chose to believe what his ego is telling me, and then various, you know, negative thoughts and emotions, and then come and then he has to react. He has to come out and say something, and so then he says something that's not very, you know, pleasant or nice. And I say something back, and then that reinforces, oh, these people, no one really cares. Everyone's inconsiderate to me, da da da. And you know, he's probably told himself that story for years. And then this is just another instance where now his brothers, people outside him in the world, are to blame for his upset state. So I'm a victim of the world. I have no ability to control this. I'm just going to react to whatever the external situations and events are, and they are going to control me. That's the ego story. And if you allow that, then you will never awaken, because this subjective self will just continue. The separate self concept will continue to be perpetuated by these illusions that you're spinning. And you just go around and around and around. So this is why people get very stuck. You're at a contour line, a very limited, narrow self-concept, and you just keep going around that line. It's the same thoughts and emotions, creates the same kind of behaviors. Those behaviors then cycle back, and they tell the false self-concept that it's true and it's real. Because look, now you're seeing these behaviors and you're seeing responses from other people, and so it must be true. But we've actually made it all up. So you have to reverse the locus of control. You cannot give power to the external world, because then you are denying your power as a son of God to hold these things in mind and stay in the truth. Okay, so that's that, I think. He's just asking us to really, you know, question the victim identity and why we're giving so much power to the externals, and turn that around with a few simple questions that help us realize that actually we have the power. We've just got to claim it. We don't have to be affected by these illusions. All right, so let's go on. Happy to go on to number 10. Lane, your Your reading.
That I am what my companions made of me seems most unlikely. Even if they did, who gave the face of innocence to me? Is this my contribution? Who then is the me who made it? And who is deceived by all my goodness and attacks it so much? I will forget the concept's foolishness and merely think of this. There are two parts to what I think I am. If one were generated by my companions, who was there to make the other? And from whom must something be kept hidden? If the world is evil, there is still no need to hide what I am made of. Who is there to perceive? And what that is attacked can need defense. So there's a few questions here that we need to ask ourselves. So it's unlikely that our companions have made us, well, made of mason. So it's just saying it's all our contribution, not our companions.
Yeah, we think that they have done this to us, and therefore, we're a victim because of the way they've treated us.
Mm-hmm.
But he's saying, question this, ask these questions, and you'll start to see the falsity of that. One were generated by my companions, and who was there to make the other? Okay, so maybe there's another self that has nothing to do with any self-concept that your companions have made for you. They might, be accusing and blaming you and attacking you. But who was there to make the other? From whom must something be kept hidden? It's really asking these probing questions so that we can start realizing the truth through this process of inquiry. And that, by the way, is how one of the schools of Vedanta works. So there was a guy called Ramana Maharshi. I've mentioned him, enlightened sage, and his method was really inquiry. All he would ask, someone came to him for help, is he would say, who suffers? Along the same lines, these kinds of questions. Who is there perceiving? Who is the perceiver there? Who suffers? And if you ask that question honestly, you have to see that who suffers is just a made-up character. It's a story in your mind, the story of your ego. And nothing else. Okay. So it's about questioning the self-concept and saying, who am I really? Who's perceiving here? Who's believing I'm an innocent victim of the world? Who suffers? Who's defending himself or herself? Who is actually perceiving here? Okay. So happy with that, Elaine? Kim?
Yeah.
Let's go to number 11 then.
Okay, perhaps the reason why this concept must be kept hidden is that in the light of pure formless awareness, I will not think it is true. And what would happen to the world I see if all its foundations were removed? My concept of the world depends upon my self-concept, and both would go if either one were ever raised to doubt. the remembrance of perfect love does not seek to throw me into panic. So it merely asks a little question.
Okay. Very profound paragraph, this. What's he
Yeah.
saying?
So it's pointing out that it's, I think we're trying to hide the fact that we are being perceived by some, well, that there's another aspect of us. So that, because otherwise, if it comes to light that we actually have this self-concept and there's this other, we actually are, how do I put it? There's an awareness that there's a self-concept, and that self-concept will collapse.
Yeah, and that's the fear of every ego, is that it will cease to exist.
Yeah, so
you know, as you go along the path, you're going to the ego's doom, and it feels it can feel very intense. You know, I've been through this process myself. I'm not sure I can handle this. This is just so intense that I don't really know what to do with myself. Because this false self-concept was really coming into my awareness very strongly and being revealed. And I was like, what is this? Who is this self-concept? Who is this really? And there was an awareness arising in me that was able to look at that and understand that it was not real. And of course, the self-concept was like, oh, my doom is upon me. This is terrifying. And so what he's saying to us is that the Holy Spirit, remembrance of perfect love, doesn't want you to panic. It took me 10 years to get there, of studying and working and practicing. It was a slow process, and it was precipitated by my life situation, which was very, very challenging at that point. So yeah, but that was obviously exactly what I needed. You know, in the challenge, I realized, well, I have to really practice this. It's not really about teaching this anymore. And for a couple of years, I didn't really teach the course. I just taught meditation and breath work. It's about practicing it and really going deep into myself and healing my mind. That's what it's for. And you know, I needed the space and time to do that.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you know, really the Holy Spirit here is going to be kind and gentle with you. It's not going to precipitate you into panic. It's going to take you step by step along this healing journey, and so that you can deal with it, so you can handle it. Because if it came all at once, it can be overwhelming. Just too much to handle. So it merely asks a little question. So let's see what that question is. All right, number 12, Elaine.
There are alternatives about the thing I must be. I might, for instance, be what I choose to have my companion be. This shifts my self-concept from what is wholly passive, and at least makes way for active choice and some acknowledgement that interaction must have entered in. There is some understanding that I choose for both of us, and what my companion represents has a meaning that I give it. It also shows some glimmering of insight into perception's law, that what I perceive reflects the state of the perceiver's mind. Yet who was it who chose first. If I am what I chose my companion to be, there were alternatives to choose among, and someone must have first decided on the one to choose and let the other go.
Okay. What's he saying in this one?
Well, it's about the two, well, there's two choices. And the first one would be what I choose to have my companions be. And then this shifts our self-concept. So then it makes way for an active choice or some acknowledgement of the interaction must have entered in. There's an understanding. So we choose both of us.
Yeah, it's the basic law of perception. It's starting to understand that what I perceive reflects the state of the perceiver's mind.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing what I want to see. If my mind is still got sin and guilt and fear in it, then this is what's going to be reflected in my so-called reality. Then he asks another question. Who was it who chose first? I am what I chose my companion to be. There must have been alternatives to choose between, and someone must have first decided on the one to choose and let the other go. Okay? So there are alternatives. And who is choosing? That's the question. So Ken Wapnick, his teaching on the course taught that there's a decision maker in your mind. So kind of a space between the Holy Spirit and the ego, and in that space you can listen to either. So it's consciousness, let's call it. The course calls it consciousness. So consciousness is there. You can either listen to the ego or the Holy Spirit, and then depending which one you listen to, then you're going to make a different choice. And it's that decision maker that he's talking to in the course. He's saying, you have the power to decide for the ego or for the Holy Spirit, depending on what you choose to be, what you choose reality to be. So choose wisely. Choose again, and choose from the right-minded self that knows that none of that, nothing that the ego wants you to choose means anything. It's only going to lead you down the garden path. Okay. It's really questioning, as I said, in the tradition of Ramana Maharshi and the Advaita Vedanta, it's an inquiry. Who suffers then? Who's perceiving? Who suffers? Who thinks? And who's the decision maker in all of this? If you ask these questions long enough, you start to come to the awareness of your true self. Okay, so then he says, number 13, although this step has gains.
Although this step has gains, it does not yet approach a basic question. Something must have come before these self-concepts, and something must have learned what gave rise to them. Nor can this be explained by either viewpoint. The main advantage of shifting to the second viewpoint from the first is that I somehow chose through my decision, but this gain is offset by almost equal loss. For now I stand accused of guilt for what my companions are, and I must share their guilt because I chose it for my companions in the image of my own. While only my companions were treacherous before, now I must be condemned along with them.
Okay.
So for me, this talks to the diagram kind of moving up those levels.
This diagram.
The other one, the one with the something must have known about the self-concept, and then it's, instead of it being projected as though it's your companion's sin and guilt, my own self-concept has got the sin and guilt. It's like moving up instead of those arrows going down. It's like this realization going back up again, like who.
Yeah. So major part of awakening is you got to stop blaming. You've got to stop blaming the world. You've got to stop blaming everyone else for your victim identity and say, well, actually, I created it.
Yeah.
So 100% responsibility. I made it all up. So I'm responsible for whatever's happened in my life, for all of the attacks, and no doubt people have experienced some horrific things, abuse and pain and suffering and sickness and death. But unless we acknowledge the truth that we've made it all up. Why? Because we decided to be a separate self. That's why you're 100% responsible for whatever happens in this system, because you made up the idea of separation. You wanted it, you believed in it, and now you're suffering the consequences of it. It doesn't seem to be your fault at this level, and that's, of course, the setup of the ego. It's saying it's not your fault. It's someone else's fault that you're unhappy. That's the setup. So then you get to project the guilt outwards onto them. And the ego says, well, the more you project your guilt onto them as blame, accusation, blame, and attack, the safer you are. Because now they're the guilty ones who are going to be punished by this fearful, wrathful, vengeful God that you've made up in your mind. This isn't real, but it's a false God made out of the false self-concept. So we have made God in our own image and likeness out of our false self-concept. That has nothing to do with the true God of pure awareness. There was a book called The God Delusion, and the guy who wrote it, Richard Dawkins, spent the whole time just really attacking this concept of a fearful, wrathful, separate God. Okay, fine. This isn't true. It's not real. So he showed that, but ignored that there's maybe something else that's totally beyond what he had framed as God. So he was having a go at the traditional concept of God, religious concept, which has been made up by the ego, and demonstrated that it's false. Okay, well, that's actually quite helpful. But then don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say there's no God. Just means that version of God was false. There might be something way beyond that, which he actually touched on in the introduction. There's a page or two introducing it, and it's like, okay, you actually touched on that, but then you completely ignored that for the rest of the book. And define, God only in the limited religious terms, which is kind of then quite easy to prove it false, isn't it? But because if you define it in its true terms, as best you can, obviously you can't really define it. But if God is just the pure formless awareness that underlies everything, then how is it possible to deny it? You're denying awareness itself, which is the hard problem of consciousness that a lot of scientists face. Like, well, where did awareness come from? Where did consciousness come from? And the hardcore materialist paradigm says, no, it came from the brain. Consciousness is rooted in the brain, and so the body and the brain then create consciousness. But then how do you explain where the body came from and the world? What formed all of that? There is no explanation within that thought system. They can't really explain it. So clearly, it's not really an answer. There must have been, if you look at this diagram, there must have been. Sorry? Was there a question? No. There must have been an awareness that preceded the idea of separation. That's what this is saying. An awareness beyond the dream that transcends separation. And that pre-existed any idea of separation. The idea of separation comes in, and within that idea, now all of these other ideas have happened, and now we find ourselves in this crazy world, seeming victims of it. But actually, the truth is that this awareness is still there. And the idea of separation is still false. And so none of its effects really mean anything. And that's the way out of the whole system. Okay, so you're saying I must share their guilt because I chose it for my companions in the image of my own. Now I must be condemned along with them. So you're saying none of this stuff, if you're playing with sin and guilt and fear, no matter how you try and deal with it, you can project it onto others. You can blame yourself, you can blame others, you can slice and dice guilt any way you want. It's not going to work. It's never going to help you to awaken. Because this approach, you're still condemned along with them. If you believe they're guilty, then so must you be. Which is why he emphasized, as you see others, so you see yourself. You see them as guilty, you're condemning yourself to be a victim in that misperception. Do you see that? Because you've become the victim of these people. And they keep you in your victim identity. So you've condemned yourself to that by condemning them as unworthy and that they should, they're sinners and they should be judged and punished by God. Well, you've just condemned yourself to be the victim, which is why all attack is self-attack, all condemnation is self-condemnation. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's push on to number 14. We've got 3 more paragraphs to go. So if you can stay with us, brilliant, Kim.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. All right.
You're gonna fade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for joining. I know it's quite late there. And thank you for
Yes.
joining. And hopefully see you again in one of the sessions soon. And we'll chat later in the week. I'll give you a call on Friday or something.
Thank you. Thanks, Jono. And
All right.
here's Elaine. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye, Kim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Join us more often. It's nice to have 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's been good. Thank you.
Good night,
Okay.
Kim.
All right.
Good night.
Namaste.
Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.
All right. So number 14, Elaine.
Yeah. The concept of the self has always been the great preoccupation of the world, and everyone believes that they must find the answer to the riddle of themselves. Awakening can be perceived as nothing more than escape from concepts. It does not concern itself with the content of the mind, but with the simple statement that it thinks. And what can think has choice and can be shown that different thoughts have different consequences. So it can learn that everything it thinks reflects the deep confusion that it feels about how it was made and what it is. And the self-concept can only vaguely appear to answer what it does not know.
Well, what's he saying there?
Well, it's about the concepts of the self and the preoccupation of the world and going through the riddle of themselves. And awakening just is not in concepts. So awakening can be perceived as nothing more than escape from concepts. But to awaken, it's not concepts. Because awakening does not concern itself with the content of the mind.
What we're trying to do is trying to awaken within the framework that the ego set. And of course, that's never going to work. The false self, the self-concept, is trying to figure out its salvation within the construct of itself, of the separate self. And it fails time and again. You're never going to do that. It's just a closed loop system. You got yourself caught up in this idea of separation, and now all of this appears to be real. And now this false self says, oh, well, I want some salvation from this. I want to be saved from all the pain and suffering and sickness and death and attack of the world in this dreadful place. But it's trying to do it within the framework that it's set of separation.
Mm-hmm.
And so all its attempts, can you see, are futile. It's never going to work.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's magic and idolatry. Okay, well, if I just do this, then that's going to save me. Special relationships, more money, whatever attracts you in the world is just an attempt to try and make what is really a disaster work. And yes, you're saying to us, just see it for what it is. It's a disaster of a thought system. It's never going to work. So get out of it. Leave it behind. You just need to transcend the entire system, which is predicated on one tiny mad idea of separation. Get out of the idea of separation and you're home. Easier said than done. Now that you're so far down the rabbit hole as a victim, you've forgotten all these steps, haven't you? You've forgotten that you decided to separate, and then you became an individual self, and then guilt and sin came, and that was so intense that the guilt and sin and fear you couldn't handle, so you projected it all outwards and made up a world, made up a physical universe, and then decided you have to come into this world and be born into it, so you can run away from God and you can play out this insane game of being a separate self and projecting your guilt outwards onto other separate selves and accusing and blaming and attacking them for the apparent sin of destroying love, which you feel you're guilty of. Totally insane. It doesn't make any sense at all. This is what Yeshua is trying to teach us. It doesn't make one jot of sense. The entire system is insane and simply needs to be seen as that, to be let go of, and then you can free your mind from the entire system and return to pure formless awareness of perfect love that has no knowledge of any of this. Okay. We go on to 15 then.
Yep. I will not seek for myself in symbols. No concept can stand for what I am. What does it matter which concept I accept while I perceive a self that interacts with evil and reacts to wicked things? My concept of myself will still remain quite meaningless, and I will not perceive that I can interact only with myself. To perceive a guilty world is only the sign that my learning has been guided by the world, and I perceive it as I perceive myself. My self-concept encompasses everything I perceive, and nothing is outside of this perception. If I can be hurt by anything, I perceive a picture of my secret wishes, nothing more than this. And in my suffering of any kind, I perceive my own hidden desire to kill. So it's saying that we're not going to seek for our true self in symbols. Symbols, what is it? Sorry, what does that mean? Symbols.
So it means I'm never going to find myself in any symbols of the world. Symbols are part of form. Symbols are false. Symbols are false idols. We seek to find out some kind of self in the symbols of the world, which we've made up to replace our true self. I will not seek for myself in symbols. Well, so the world is a symbolic representation of the idea of separation. That's what you're seeing. World of symbols, images, projected out of the mind, that symbolize, that manifest, that give form to the idea of separation and a separate self. I'm saying don't seek in these symbols of separation for the truth, because they were created by the idea of separation to symbolize it and give it apparent reality outside of you, so that you would believe that the symbols are now true and separation is true, and all of this denies your true self and pure formless awareness of perfect love. So the symbol that Yeshua gives us to replace all of the false symbols of the world is the Christ. He says there is a true self. It's your true awareness. It still has a symbolic value in this world, because it's not pure formless awareness of perfect love, but it's very close to it. It doesn't deny pure formless awareness of perfect love. It draws on it for its fundamental awareness. But it still has a symbolic function because it's dealing with perception. Perception is symbolic. You're dealing with symbols and images, and how do you perceive those? How do you interpret those? So the true self of the Christ still has a symbolic function, and it is itself a symbol, but it is a symbol of heaven in the world. He's saying, okay, so attach yourself to that then, because that is a way home. That's taking you back home to this heavenly state of pure formless awareness, perfect love, rather than away from it into the symbols of the world. And so the Holy Trinity has a symbolic value in that the Christ and the true self and the Holy Spirit can symbolize true reality to you. It can symbolize God in this world. And if you will listen to them, because they are not just idle symbols that stand there and do nothing, they actually guide you. And the true self is able to inspire thoughts and perceptions. Those perceptions then become the true self and the Holy Spirit in action to correct your misperceptions and undo the false self. So the genius of this course is that as you undo your false perceptions, you also undo the false self-concept that made them. Yeshua's understood that really, really clearly. The way to undo the false self-concept is to undo the false perceptions that it has. Hence, forgiveness or letting go is the way of awaken. If that weren't true, then forgiveness or letting go wouldn't work, but it is true, fortunately. So you just need to let go of your perceptions, your misperceptions, and then automatically you're undoing the false self-concept. Automatically, that happens by default. And you're going, by default, then you're moving more and more into your true self or Christ. And by default, when you're ready, God will take the final step and you'll be back in pure formless awareness of perfect love. And your awakening will be complete. Okay, does that answer that question, right? Symbols.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay, and what else is he saying here? Why?
Um,
Self-concept. Yeah, he's saying if you perceive a guilty world, then you must be in a false self-concept. You cannot perceive a guilty world with accusation, blame, and attack and fear being the norm without identifying with a separate self. You must have misidentified yourself to perceive that.
Which
Which is why when you undo those misperceptions, you also undo the false self-concept that's perceiving them. So the Holy Spirit's methodology is really simple. Just look at the perceptions that are wrong, correct them, let them go. And by doing that, you are undoing the false self-concept of a separate self that underpins the whole dream automatically. You don't have to, oh, well, how do I now let go of my separate self? Just change your perception. Just let go of your misperceptions. That's all you have to do, and then the Holy Spirit does the rest. I'm saying suffering of any kind, I perceive my own hidden desire to kill. It's quite a statement, isn't it? So you perceive that you're suffering or someone else is suffering. It just activates your own hidden desire to kill what? The true self. To kill off guard and establish your separate self. And then you are going to be punished and die for that sin. So it's a thought system of death, a death wish. That's the ego. Always trying to exterminate itself because it doesn't feel worthy of even existing, but at the same time, paradoxically wanting to exist. All right. So let's go on to number 16.
Yeah. You don't mind 9 o'clock? Can I finish? Because I've got a few bits and pieces I need to do. So we've got another 15
only have 2
minutes.
paragraphs. So
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
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 Number 16.
Yeah. I will make many self-concepts as my learning progresses. Each one will show the changes in my own relationships as my perception of myself is changed. There will be some confusion every time there is a shift, but I can be thankful that the learning of the world is loosening its grip upon my mind. And I am sure and happy in the confidence that it will finally go and leave my mind at peace. The role of the accuser will appear in many places and in many forms, and each will seem to be accusing me, yet I will have no fear that it will not be undone. Just saying that we'll be making a lot of self-concepts while we're going through this progress. And each one is going to show us our perceptions in our relationships of ourselves. So what we see in others is in us. And there will be some confusion when there's a shift. But this is actually a good thing because it loosens grip on the mind.
But at the time, it can feel horrendous. It just feels like your world's collapsing.
Yeah.
So one has to bear in mind these teachings and accept that, okay, this is a process. I've got to go through this. And as uncomfortable and difficult as it is, it's necessary if I ever want to free my mind. I can't go back. The hero on the hero's journey said, I can't go back into my known self, the false self concept, because I've seen through that. I know that it's not true. The only way forward is to let it go completely. But on this journey, there will be many self-concepts, that come and go. I think of my own journey. I wanted to be a champion squash player, so I was very identified with that. Then I kind of let go of that. Then it was, okay, well, you can become an entrepreneur, then a spiritual teacher, and meditation teacher, and then into corporate finance, and I'm want to be a successful corporate financier, and so on. But through it all, there is an awakening happening, a realization that you are none of those things. Those things do not define you. They are just false self-concepts that come and go. They're part of your journey of awakening, but don't don't get attached to anything, because they change so often. In a person's lifetime, how many times do these self-concepts change?
Yeah,
Every 5 or 10 years,
yeah,
on
lots.
average.
Mm-hmm.
So many times. Think of how many self-concept roles you've gone through since you were a child.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Many self-concepts. When you're a child, you have a self-concept, then you grow into a teenager, you have a self-concept there, then you become a young adult. Okay, now that's a different self-concept. And as you get older, okay, well, now that changes, and life changes. So maybe I get married, I have kids, I have a job. All of that starts to change your parent self-concept. And then again, when kids leave home, then there's another change of self-concept, and then you retire, another change of self-concept. Then you get, older and sick, and there's another self-concept if you're sick, and so on. And if you really look at that honestly, is any of that real? Can any of
no,
those false self-concepts be true if they are changing so frequently?
well, no, it's not, no.
Evidently, they can't. They change sometimes every few months.
Oh, yeah,
The longest ones can maybe last for a decade if you're lucky, a
yeah,
decade or two, possibly. And then it changes again because life moves on, and your life situation changes, and then another self-concept emerges. So what we've got to learn is, as we go through these inevitable changes, and you play these roles, just not to be identified with the role and the concept of the self that is the role. Understand that you're not a concept. You are the awareness that's aware of it all, that's able to observe it all, but without attachment, without judgment. Because none of those self-concepts and nothing that the self-concepts get up to really mean anything. If they're all false, none of them mean anything, do they?
oh, no, yeah,
Which is really what he's saying in this. I think it's a pretty important section, actually,
it is.
which is why I wanted to do it. Okay, so the world can teach no images. Go into that last paragraph.
The world can teach no images of me unless I want to learn them. There will come a time when images have all been released and I will perceive that I do not know what I am. It is to this unsealed and open mind that truth returns, unhindered and unlimited. Truth is revealed exactly as it is when I have let go of my self-concepts, when every concept has been raised to doubt and question, and been recognized as made as no assumptions that can stand against pure formless awareness, then the truth is left free to enter into the sanctuary, clean and free of guilt. There is no statement that the world is more afraid to hear than this. I do not know what I am, and therefore do not know what I am doing, where I am, or how to perceive the world or myself. Yet my awakening begins with this learning, and what I really am will tell me of itself. So it's just saying the world as we know it can teach no images unless we want to learn them. But then there comes a time when the images are released, and they will tell us that we really don't know who we are.
Yeah. I mean, this is ultimate humility, isn't it? I really, this statement is saying I'm totally clueless. I have no idea what I'm doing, which is very humbling for the ego. I do not know what I'm doing, where I am, or how to perceive the world or myself. Okay, right. So I've been at it for 40, 50, 60 years, and I'm totally clueless. You got to laugh. And most people's egos go, oh, no, that can't be the case. Because, you know, my false self-concept knows what it's doing. This is why they say, you know, you must humble yourself. He who humbles himself will be made great, said Yeshua in one of his sermons. He who humbles himself, because you have to say, I don't actually know what the hell I'm doing here. I don't have a clue. So rather just let me let go of all of my own ideas and own misperceptions and attempts to control my life and reality and listen to a higher voice that does know what I'm doing here. It does know my only purpose and function. It does know how I should perceive the world. And it will tell me if I will listen to it. But if I think that I know and I carry on listening to the voice of my ego, then it can't come in and I block it. So we must humble ourselves in order to awaken. And no one will do this course. If you come to this course and you think you already know who you are and what reality is and how to run your life, you won't do the course, will you? Say, oh, no, I don't need all this nonsense. This is all rubbish. I'm okay, thanks. It's not for me. And you'll go on your way. Maybe gaily for a while, as Yeshua says, you know. In some paths, it seems to be gay for a while, but the pain and the suffering come at some point. Inevitably, because it's an illusion. So you travel gaily on until now a challenge happens. Something changes. Again, the pain, the suffering, the sickness, the death, they arise. And he's saying, well, let's just look at it. Look at it together with me. And I will take you by the hand and I will guide you through this process of awakening from these nightmares that you've made up. Surely that's a better solution than somehow trying to make this world work. Surely by now, you know, if you've lived 40, 50, 60 years, you realize that the world doesn't work. Many people still haven't. Many people are still trying, but I mean, think of that, you know, that poor guy. I feel a bit sorry for him in some ways. It's like, well, you're probably getting upset all the time by people doing things on the public footpath outside your house. And that's just making you upset and you don't know who you are, so you keep doing that. And then you're trying to control what they do to try and manage your own experience of life. Oh, okay, well now I'm going to go and ask them to move or leave or because that's going to make me happier. I mean, it just endless drama, endless pain and suffering. The obvious solution is just let it go, just like whatever. It doesn't matter what people do outside my property or not. You know, it's a public footpath. I bought a house right next to a stile on a public footpath. Okay, well, I've got to just accept that people are going to do what they do. It's okay. Don't let it upset me. That's the answer. Not desperately trying to control your external reality to match your expectations of how it should be. That's a game you're always going to lose. All right. So really, really, really good section. I think Elaine, to wrap it up, just read this. You said you want to go at 9, so you probably got a few minutes just to read it. Don't comment on it. Just read it.
The learning of the world revolves around constructing a concept of oneself that aligns with the world's perceived realities. This self-concept serves as an image compatible with the world's illusions. As one matures by the world's standards, this image is perfected to align with the world's demands. Self-concept is a fabrication It does not represent my true essence, which is pure formless awareness of perfect love. The world offers a dual purpose, self-concept, one that is seemingly innocent, loving and compassionate, yet can become angered by the world's perceived wickedness and unfairness. The self-concept stands as a defense against the world's injustices. It represents an image of innocence that can justify self-defense against the harsh world. Hidden beneath this innocent facade is a fearful lesson that the self-concept aims to teach. I am what you made of me. This belief in one false self can be used to both accuse oneself and others, perpetuating a cycle of blame and condemnation. And concepts including that of self aren't natural. They're learned and created. They underpin the world but cannot prove its reality. The self-concept is elusive and has been proprietized in worldly teachings, guiding me to follow its laws without question. Yet the remembrance of perfect love suggests reconsidering my self-concept to attain peace. There's an integral connection between the roles I assign to others and how I perceive myself. Changing these perceptions affects relationships and temporarily confuses me, but ultimately loosens the world's grip on my mind. The world offers me many self-concepts as I learn, reflecting shifts in my perceptions and relationships. Despite temporary confusion, I can maintain my hope for inner peace as the world's teachings slowly lose their hold over my mind. My accusations and self-imposed guilt will eventually dissipate. The genuine truth reveals itself only when I set aside all preconceived self-concepts. The world fears the admission of not knowing one's true self. However, recognizing this ignorance paves the way for my genuine awakening and allows my true self to reveal itself as I let go of my self-concept. And the key message.
Key message.
The world's learning shapes my self-concept, which then contradicts my true self. This self-concept, influenced by my perceptions of and interactions in the world, can reflect innocence or guilt. To truly awaken and understand who I really am, I must transcend these worldly concepts and recognize that I don't fully comprehend my true nature. Only then can I begin to understand the truth about myself.
Yeah. So in summary, we're clueless.
Yeah.
We have no idea who we are. If you don't know who you are, and the self is then perceiving the world, how do you know that what you're perceiving is true?
Well, this
The
is why
false self then perceive a false world. So none of it's true.
this is why we're all stressed, because we just don't trust. Yeah.
Oh.
Understandably. Because we're governed by the limited self, yeah.
So just to realize, all he's really saying in this section is your false self-concept is not going to work. Recognize that it is false, that because of it, if you've believed in it, you know nothing, and be open to correction. Be open to the Holy Spirit coming in and your true self coming in and now guiding you instead. But the false self concept and the true self cannot operate in the same space because they contradict each other. So you have to make way. You let go of the one to make way for the other. Which is why the false self concept must die for the true self, for the Christ, to be reasserted in your mind. Which is why letting go is the way out. You have to let go of the illusions, the illusory self and the illusory world that it's projected, which has just been used to cover over the truth of who you are. And I had that awakening experience with Vipassana meditation. It was so clear to me. Yeah, I've just projected the world out, and it's just a veil of illusion that I've used to cover over this awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love that I've just experienced. That's its only purpose. And in that moment, I got the whole course. I was like, okay, I get it. I see exactly what I've done. And I cried. It was so sad. I'm like, that was just the most stupid thing to ever do. Why would you cover over that pure awareness with all of these crazy thoughts and all this rubbish, which causes you, so much pain and suffering and ultimately to die? Why would you do that? Well, there's no good reason. This is what the Course is saying. It's just illusion. It was a bad choice. You made it all up. A very bad decision, and fortunately you can realize that and reverse it all, which is what it's suggesting we do. Okay, so any other thoughts, comments, or questions on this one, Elaine?
Yeah, another very good chapter. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, this is a good section. I want to do it because it really gets to the
nitty-gritty
core of the problem, which is this false self-concept.
Yeah,
That's the only problem here that we ever experience it. We just think the problem's outside of us, but actually the problem is our own false self-concept always. Just doesn't seem to be that way. To the untrained mind, the problems seem to be outside of you. Because the untrained mind has forgotten that it's just projecting those problems out of its false self-concept. It's actually making them up. But it's forgotten that, and then it judges them as real. All a massive deception. Just self-deception. A false self deceives you into believing that it's real, that the world is real, that you can suffer and die. But the Holy Spirit says no, that none of that is true. And so you've got to drop that self-concept to make way for the true self or the Christ, which is the Holy Trinity system. Before you go into pure formless awareness of perfect love, you have to be rock solidly established in the true self in this world, so that all of your perceptions are corrected. You don't get sucked into all the drama of the ego. You stay above the battleground, and then this awareness is very much in your mind. This awareness is dominating your mind, and you're ready to just merge back into this pure formless awareness of perfect love and become one with it, which is Yeshua describes that as God takes the final step. But that will happen when you've done the work of collapsing your false self-concept. Without that, you'll never get to God, because you'll never get to the true self or the Christ that's necessary as a kind of intermediate step while you're in the world. Okay. So well done, Elaine. Thanks for staying till the end. Good section, long section, but we did it.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's a lot of learning there. So just looking ahead to tomorrow, shall we do an evening?
Afternoon.
No, can we do an afternoon? Is afternoon better for you?
Tomorrow it will be, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
popping
Should we
out.
do an afternoon? We start at, say, 2 o'clock. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okie doke. See you
See you
then.
then.
Good night.
All right.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, so that's a wrap for tonight. Thank you to Kim and Elaine for joining. If you enjoyed that session, a couple of things you can do. Hit the subscribe button to subscribe to the channel. You'll be notified whenever I go live, which is 3 or 4 times a week. You'll be able to watch these on a live stream or as a recording. You can also join us in these sessions. So to do that, go to lifebuild.com. You'll see that in the background of the video. Just type in lifebuild.com, hit enter in your browser and or your phone, and you'll be able to get access to a lot of free content. I send out a daily inspirational quote, followed by some teaching around that, a kind of blog post that leads into the daily lesson from A Course in Miracles. There's also a section of the text, all translated, as you saw if you watched the video, translated into an alternative language to help you understand it better. You get access to all of this at lifebuild.com. You'll sign up to a Telegram group, and I send out Telegram messages with the content every day. As well as invitations to join these live sessions and the Zoom link to do that. So do join us, and hope you'll take the next step in your awakening, and perhaps to see you on the inside soon. So thanks for watching and listening, and namaste, which means the true self in me acknowledges and honors that same true self in you. I'm wishing you much love, peace, and joy in that self. Bye for now.